All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about ulcus mole, which you probably know by its global name, Chanchroid. Now, this is an STI that tends to fly under the radar, but its implications are pretty serious. So we're going to break down everything you need to know about it.
So, what is this thing really? It gets mistaken for other things all the time, like syphilis or herpes, because they can all cause similar looking sores. But Chanchroid is its own unique infection, with its own cause and its own set of dangers. So, let's get a really clear definition.
Okay, this comes straight from the official Indonesian national guidelines. Chancroid is an acute disease caused by the bacterium Haemophilus ducreae. Now, the two keywords you absolutely have to remember are nyeri and lunak. That's painful and soft. This is the classic giveaway. You see, the sore from primary syphilis is usually hard and painless. But the ulcer from chancroid, it's incredibly tender, it hurts, and it has these soft, almost ragged edges. That difference is just crucial for getting the diagnosis right. Next up, let's talk about where this infection is actually found. Where in the world is it a major public health issue? Because its footprint, well, it isn't random at all. It follows some very specific patterns. Chancroid really thrives in tropical and subtropical parts of the world, especially in communities with limited resources. While it's become super rare in places like the US or Europe, it's still one of the leading causes of genital ulcers in parts of Africa, the Caribbean, and right here in Southeast Asia. So it's still a really significant, though often overlooked, global health problem.
Now, check this out. This number is pretty wild. For every 10 men who are diagnosed with Chanchroid, only one woman is. And it's not because women aren't getting infected, it's often because they can be asymptomatic carriers. This means they can carry the bacteria and pass it on without ever developing those classic painful ulcers themselves.
And this gets to the heart of the challenge with chancroid. Yeah, in the US, cases have dropped from thousands a year back in the day to almost none today. But globally, what we see is likely just the tip of the iceberg. The bacteria is just notoriously hard to grow in a lab, so a lot of the time diagnosis is based on symptoms alone. That means the real number of cases around the world is probably way, way higher than what's actually on the books. Okay, so we know the what and the where. Now, let's get into the how. To really understand chancroid, we've got to get to know the microscopic culprit behind it and its very specific plan of attack. This is the nitty-gritty of how the disease actually works.
So meet our antagonist, Haemophilus ducreae. It's a tiny, rod-shaped, gram-negative bacteria. And the key thing to know about it is that it's a fastidious organism. Basically, it's incredibly picky. It's like the diva of the bacterial world. It needs a very specific environment and special nutrients to grow, which, you guessed it, is exactly why it's so frustrating to culture in the lab.
And here's a fantastic visual clue that helps with diagnosis. When you take a sample from one of the ulcers and look at it under a microscope, the bacteria often line up in these parallel chains. It's so distinctive that microbiologists gave it a pretty cool nickname, a school of fish. Sometimes you'll hear railroad tracks, too. It's a classic sign that you're looking at H2 The whole infection process is kind of like a 3-act play. First, you have infiltration. The bacteria needs a way in, usually through a tiny little tear or scrape in the skin during sexual contact. Then comes the attack. Once it's inside, it unleashes its secret weapon, a really nasty toxin. This stuff basically hijacks our own cells, stops them from dividing, and forces them to die. And the result of all that cellular chaos, that's Act 3, the formation of that classic, inflamed, and super painful ulcer. Now, you should know, this disease doesn't always follow the textbook description. It can show up in a bunch of different ways, and it's super important for doctors to recognize these different forms, because how it looks can really vary from one person to the next. And this table lays out those variations perfectly. I mean, you can get a giant chancroid, the name pretty much says it all, or there's the phagogenic type, which is this really destructive form where other bacteria jump into the original sore and cause massive tissue damage. Then there's transient chancroid, where the ulcer itself is tiny and heals up fast, but the real show is this hugely swollen, painful lymph node in the groin. So yeah, recognizing these different faces of the disease is key. But here's the thing. Even though some of those forms sound pretty scary, there's some really, really good news. The treatment for chancroid is actually very straightforward, and we have clear guidelines that lead to a complete cure. Let's be crystal clear on this. Chancroid is 100% curable.
This isn't a virus you have for life. It's a bacterial infection, and with the right antibiotics, we can kick it out of the body for good. And here are the weapons of choice, recommended by both Indonesian guidelines and the CDC. The #1 option is zithromycin. It's a single 1-gram dose. One pill, one time, and you're done. Think about how huge that is for making sure people actually finish their treatment. A single shot of ceftriaxone works great too. This simplicity is exactly what makes getting rid of this infection so achievable. So you might be thinking, if it's so easy to cure, why are we spending all this time talking about it? Well, that brings us to our final and honestly, maybe the most critical point. The major complication of Chanchroid and why prevention is absolutely everything. Right, here's the bottom line. The open source from Chanchroid basically roll out the red carpet for HIV. For someone who is HIV negative, these ulcers are like a wide open door for the virus to get into their bloodstream. And for someone who is already HIV positive, the ulcers are loaded with immune cells that HIV loves to infect, which makes it incredibly easy to pass the virus to a partner. This dangerous partnership is why controlling Chanchroid is such a key part of the global fight against HIV. The game plan for prevention is actually pretty simple and effective. It's all about reducing risk. Using condoms correctly and consistently is without a doubt the best barrier. And just as important is partner treatment. Because women can be carriers without symptoms, it is absolutely essential that you find and treat all recent sexual partners of someone who's diagnosed. If you don't, you're just stuck in a cycle, and the chain of transmission never gets broken. And that all leaves us with a pretty powerful final thought. We have a disease that is a major driver of the HIV epidemic. At the same time, we have simple, single-dose cures and prevention strategies that we know work. In places that have gone all in on these programs, Chanchroid has practically disappeared. So the question isn't really if we can beat it, but whether we can find the global will to make Chanchroid the next public health enemy we target for total eradication.